But what we're really talking about is taking your page, taking all your pages in your funnel and optimizing them to improve conversions. When you do this, you're not only increasing your conversion rate, you're reducing your cost per acquisition, your CPA. We're increasing your AOV, your average order value, which enables you to succeed.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Workergenics Mastermind. Today, we have special guest Scott Zetlan, who has an amazing company called VisiOpt, and they are doing some really incredible work helping businesses optimize their customer experience with marketing and sales. Welcome to the podcast, Scott. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I appreciate you inviting me, Harley.
My pleasure. So tell me more about VisiOpt. What we've shared so far is it's a digital marketing powerhouse. You have 2 decades of experience doing media buying, conversion rate optimization, helping people with their customer journey and analytics. Tell us a little bit more about the background, how you came to this.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been in marketing now, gosh, I'm going to age myself, but been online for well over 20 years. And early on realized that when you want to scale, you want to buy traffic. And that if you are not testing and optimizing, you are leaving a lot of money on the table. I was fortunate enough to meet some people in this area. And I want to back up a minute and just say that it sounds like this is about math. And it is, I guess. There sounds like this is, all, right brain. But in reality, as marketers, one of the things that we all learn early on from the greatest is that you need to know your numbers and you need to improve your numbers. And so we realized real quickly on with some big mistakes that we're leaving a lot of money on the table if we were not properly testing and optimizing. And that sort of led to an ongoing journey. Like, how can we make this better? So many people are doing it wrong. And we're talking from small companies, 6 figures all the way up to 10-figure companies that either aren't optimizing enough, aren't optimizing in the right way. And they're chokeholding their ability to either start on cold traffic or grow on cold traffic. So at any rate, that's how we sort of got started. We just realized from our own mistakes, and the minute it sort of opened up our eyes, right? It opened up a whole new world.
Let's kind of take a step back a little bit and explain kind of what are we talking about optimizing here? Marketing and sales are kind of very generic, broad terms. We're talking kind of specific numbers. Are we talking about ads? Are we talking about website? Is it all the above? What are you talking about?
That's a great question. So let me talk about this and make this very, very specific. When you are trying to do anything online, you have the creative part, and then you have where you're driving them. So when I say creative, you have ads of some sort, whether that's an ad on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, you have an ad somewhere, or an email. You have pages you're sending them to. That's the funnel. That's the journey. We're talking about optimizing both of those. But to get very specific, 70 to 80% of your results is not going to be, especially today, about Facebook or some magic media buyer or some magic trick that you learned. 80% of the results are going to be about what happens when they hit your page. What happens when they reach your lander? So specifically with VisiOpt, what we're referring to is the ability to run expansive tests that give you the equivalent, we can talk about this if you want, the equivalent of more than 4,000 different tests, different split tests in a single test without requiring any more traffic. But what we're really talking about is taking your page, taking all your pages in your funnel and optimizing them to improve conversions. When you do this, you're not only increasing your conversion rate, you're reducing your cost per acquisition, your CPA. We're increasing your AOV, your average order value, which enables you to succeed. It's really, even though we're all marketers, even though we're all talking about creatives, ultimately what the difference is how much are you paying for a click and how much are you earning. And so the way to do that is to optimize that experience for your prospects to increase that conversion, and not just conversion, but their average order value as high as possible. And so many companies are leaving money on the table. And it's why they're seeing all these sort of ups and downs and issues with the ad networks. And sure, the ad networks like Facebook and they have their blame, but most of it is just because their page isn't optimized enough for broad enough traffic. On the ad side, we can also help there, and that's because most people do not truly understand the customer journey. They don't truly have a snapshot into where the prospect is going in order to be able to purchase. I'll give you just one quick example that make that illustrate. We had a recent client that we were aiding their media buying team. And what they didn't realize is because they will typically optimize for the first click attribution, which is what Facebook does. For anybody that doesn't know, that means like, what is the first ad they click before they make a purchase? And they generally have a 7-day window, which means that if it's 8 days before they purchase, now there's it could be a second or third ad, right? But the big thing is they were getting on average 3 to 4 different, actually, they were up into 5 different ad clicks before a purchase was made. If you don't know that, number one, you don't know how to reduce it, which is going to reduce your costs. If you are doing anything or have a media buying team that is turning on or off ads, which ads do you turn on and which ads do you turn off? If all we're doing on the first click and looking at it, whether it's direct through Facebook or some other platform, well, what if we, turn on and off from here, but in the middle of that journey, there's an ad that's critical to making that purchase. If you shut that off, that breaks apart. So in its simplest form, understanding and being able to see that journey clearly is the difference between profit and loss. And I believe while it's not 100%, it's a reason why people are seeing so much ups and downs, right? It's not all the ad network. It's that they're not seeing it properly.
What are some common mistakes you see? Obviously, like if people are not testing, they're going to have these. Like, what kind of like if someone's looking at their landing page or their ads, might you say, hey, you probably could benefit from this optimization testing?
So you're asking in general, well, let's just talk about this in a broader sense, because I think there's multiple questions built in there. So first of all, like I mentioned before, and I don't mean this to sound self-serving, most companies are not testing enough, don't realize how much can possibly be tested. And so the first mistake that they're making is assuming that their page is fully optimized, and they'll go in, and even if they have a CRO team or whoever they have, they're making they may tweak a headline, or they may look at things by committee and make a bunch of changes, not knowing really what's increasing or decreasing conversions. So at the simplest form, you have to understand that even if you are currently scaling with cold traffic, even if you feel that your offer is fully optimized, there is generally not an offer or ad that we haven't seen where we haven't been able to increase conversions through VisiOpt between 30 to as much as 418% in a single test. Wow. Now, I don't do that to throw out huge numbers, but it's true. And the reason I say proven offers is because if these are brands that are spending a lot of time, a lot of money with professionals and believe that their site is fully optimized, then anyone that is trying to get their offer up and working, struggling, and maybe at break even or loss, you have to realize you're only a couple of tests away. So first of all, they have to understand, whether we ever work with them or not, understand that there is a lot more that can and should be tested. The second thing that I would think of talking, there's just so much, right, is that everything that is on your page is either increasing conversions or decreasing conversions. Everything. We've proven this out by data. Too many people, I guess the word is funnel hack, or are watching what their competitors are doing. And even if their competitors are successful, it is the blind leading the blind. And so many times we're running tests or instructing clients to run tests where they're actually removing things that they put on their page because they thought it was best practices. And by removing it, conversion jumps. So I think that we have to take at a higher level philosophy to understand that your page is just a starting point, that it is not enough to just test a couple of headlines. And the third thing I would make clear is that it's about the relationship between the variables. And I'm saying it's not about testing headline A versus headline B. It really is about headline A, which of these 4 headlines works best with which hero image, works best with which call to action, which VisiOpt also enables them to see. So we have plenty of tests. I gave a recent example where I won't go through the whole thing here, but basically, if they were testing videos, if they were testing video 1 versus video 2 versus video 3, pretty simple. Most companies, somebody would give them the video, they'd go and test it. If they ran that as a traditional ABC split test, nothing would have won. Meaning whatever time, the control would have still won. Now, don't quote me in the exact page recipe, but something like headline 2 with video 3 and call to action 4 ended up in a result of 32% in real sales. So if we look at this, and let's just use some dumbed down math, they happen to be doing a lot more volume than this. But if we take $100,000 just to illustrate for anybody listening, that would have been a $32,000 a month raise or close to $400,000 where the test would have been thrown out. And the reason I want to give that example is because most people do not realize, by not testing properly, by not understanding the combination of variables or which of those variables and versions are actually lifting versus decreasing. So I'll add one or two more quick things just to hopefully add value for people. If you went in and you came up with a bunch of different variables and made a change, it's called what we call a cluster test. Okay. And so they see a win. You're in a team, you all have some smart marketers, and you make 2 or 3, 4 changes. You don't know when you go live, even if you see an increase, which we're lifting up the conversions and which we're pulling them down. So what typically happens is you have a test, you put it out to live traffic. Now all of a sudden your media buying is going up and down. It's because you do have variables that are pulling down. So I think that the last part of this is, if you are going to test, and if you don't have a tool like VisiOpt, it's fine. Isolate those variables. Don't do what's called a cluster test. Now, I could keep talking about this, but feel free to jump in because I just want to give people some practical advice, because all of this ties directly into how your conversions are going to increase and that AOV. And so if you're not familiar with it, if you think that, you had a copywriter, A-list copywriter, I don't care if you spend $20,000 to $50,000, that's a V1. When you're dealing with cold traffic and not warm traffic, all of this has to be tested. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I have some questions. So
Yep.
I think a lot of people listening are probably like, I'm maybe running a few ads, maybe, in the $1,000 to less than $10,000 a month ad spend. If someone is
Yep.
in that case, can they even afford doing this level of testing that you're talking about?
The short answer is yes. So let me give you but full qualified. Clearly. So I don't want it there. You can't afford not to be testing. Let's start there. From my perspective, if you're at the $1,000 level, then there has to be a reason why you can't afford to spend more than that, right? In order to spend more than that, your page has to convert better and a higher AOV. So I'm going to give you a couple. So the short answer is you absolutely need to be testing, possibly. The second half of that answer is that the more you're spending, the more return on investment from your testing you will get, right? You do need, there's a practicality to it. And there's going to be a third part of this I just want to get to, but there's a practicality. If somebody is spending $50,000, dollars a month, they get a 5%, 10%, 30% bump, they're going to see more to the bottom line than somebody that's spending 10,000, right? However, I guess my big message is you should always be testing, right? You do need a certain amount of traffic. Goes beyond this conversation. There are tools, there are methodologies that you can use to get in and out of tests quicker, even if you don't have as much traffic. Going to the $1,000, just so there, if you're only spending, were you saying $1,000 a day or $1,000 a month?
Let's say a month.
Okay. You're not realistically, listen, as a lesson, you have two options in any kind of marketing: time or money, right? You have to acquire data. I think that that's a lesson that everybody gets. The easy way or the hard way, it's just a fact. So if you're limited, you have to understand that your tests are going to run longer, right? Should you still run them? Yes. Should you limit the scope of them? Yes. $1,000 a month is very, very little to spend on traffic. I mean, if we go through and we figure out, at $1,000 a day being, let's say, roughly $30,000 a month, $500 a day being, $15,000 a month, I think you really want to be spending a minimum of a couple of $100 a day or have some sort of free warm traffic. $1,000 is very difficult to make it work, regardless of testing there, because you're taking one shot in the dark. And like I said, it's either data or money. It takes so long to acquire that money. If we use Facebook, and I know this can change and there, but we say at $2 a click. Okay, you're getting 500 total visits to your site over the course of 30 days. I just want a practical answer. So my short answer is, yeah, everybody needs to be testing because you have to make improvement. The reality is, do you need a ton of traffic? No. Do you need some realistic traffic? Yes. And you can either get that through paid ads. And if you can't afford that on paid ads, even though there isn't a one-to-one correlation, correlation. You want to find out how to boost that either through affiliate traffic or other ways to drive qualified customers to your site.
That was perfect. So let's say someone is, kind of bootstrapping, they've got some ads going and they are using the optimization strategies that you have with VisiOpt. Is this something
Yep.
that is like an ongoing, like just they're testing all the time, or is it like kind of time bounded where it's like, hey, let's make the 10,000 investment this month, even though we've only been spending 1,000 to get the data, to get a good set of information, or is it something like we always need to be testing every single month?
Okay, so that's a really good question. So I'm going to answer this with we don't take on many clients. They have to be a good fit, meaning by that, where we do it for them. Most people will be using VisiOpt. We've had clients pay our firm to continually optimize for them for 3 and 4 years straight for the same offer. So it's the word Kaizen, which means continual improvement. You will always and should always be testing. That's what's going to continue to get isn't an end date. The second sort of implied part of it, like, do we spend $10,000 this month to get the data? That is an option, although I like a more methodical approach, meaning I want to see some improvement and use those as clues as to what my next move will be. So yeah, you need a certain amount. I don't want to take somebody, just misrepresent and have somebody who's 1,000. We're going to invest $10,000, this month in traffic. We're going to get a 32, 40%, 100% bump in conversions, and we're ready to roll. It's not like a gamble. It is about running tests and experiments that then lead to the next test and experiment, so it's ongoing. So I don't want somebody to say, listen, this is the magic formula, although in some ways, if you want to use that kind of term, it has to be done with a methodical, ongoing way so that it makes more sense to your business. And I just want that clear. So it is definitely ongoing. And the second part of that is I want people who don't have much budget now not to think, yeah, if we can rile up or wrangle up this much in ad spend, that's the magic. I would not feel comfortable recommending that. I think they should test with what they have, test small, get bumps, use that data to invest more to get more traffic.
What are some of the reasons that the testing does need to continue? I mean, I have heard things with and I'm not a marketing or ads expert,
Sure.
like algorithms on the different platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, what have you, change. And some people that are doing well with ads for a while, then it drops off. You kind of alluded to that at the beginning of the episode here. What kind of trends are you seeing that, reinforce why people need to continue testing?
Well, the general, first of all, and I'm going to answer both parts of that because they are generally, first of all, there is a need. You should always be testing. The market is changing. The market continually gets more sophisticated. What they're seeing in the market is always changing. And lastly, there's always room for improvement. When you're going, right, we're talking, if you're thinking, well, there's only so many headlines. It's not about headlines. It's literally when you start looking at the full process through all those pages. So the simple answer is the market is changing. People's levels of awareness is changing. Plus, you really never reach an end. The second part of your question was built in that I think is worth talking about is, yeah, the algorithms change. I think this is worth it. Yes, they change. Here's what beats the algorithms. If you have a really good converting offer, we're talking about the funnel, that is broad enough, here's what doesn't work. You have an offer that works just for a really tiny segment of the audience. So let's use Facebook. You go in, you see some initial positive signs, but the minute you try to expand your budget, it falls apart. That generally is not the algorithm. That is more or less a factor of the offer. So yes, algorithms change. Yes, rules change. But the one constant is if you focus on your front-end creative ads and what's on page. In fact, I think this is an important message for anybody, regardless, that goes a little bit even outside the testing. Stop chasing the shiny objects. It's not about some special Facebook hack or YouTube hack, it really isn't. By and large, the ad networks are becoming more and more automated, AI-based, meaning there's less levers for people and media buyers to pull. So that is what lends itself. I think it's a great thing for any of us real marketers that really want to grow a business. It's all about the creative. It's all about that front-end creative. Now, to be clear, front-end creative, some special ad also isn't going to save your business. You have to test it. Like I said, 80% is when they click, and they show up on your site, do they take your action or not? If not, why? How can we improve that action? I hope that helps answers like sort of, I just want people that are looking and chasing the algorithm. If you're not succeeding, if you're having troubles, there's a really high probability. While there are certain things that you have to do and certain ways that you have to set up your ads, chances are really, really good that it's your offer is not converting high enough.
So let's say someone's onboarded, they're using VisiOpt. You mentioned like thousands of tests in the time it takes others to do
Yep.
one. That's going to generate a lot of data, I imagine. What kind of like actionable feedback do people get that they can share with like their marketing team to help adjust creative? What does that look like?
So first of all, let's make clear, when they get in the thousands of, let's say, regardless, hundreds of thousands, that's boiled down by VisiOpt into a few different, what we call page recipes. So in its simplest form, well, the page recipes is going to win, and it's running against your control. So they will be able to see in real time a test is to clarify. I think this is a good point. We made a change last week and we're seeing how it works this week. It's the same traffic to a set of pages, your control plus experimental pages at the same time. So when you do that, you're going to be able to see the difference in conversion rate. You're going to be able to see the statistical significance. You're going to be able to see the difference in revenue and the difference in AOV. So you're going to be able to show. Now, there was a different part in Tribute there. So what do we show to the ad team? Well, they both feed each other, right? So things that you see happening in your ads, in your ad tests and your creative, can feed what you may want to test and will test on the landing page side. And wins that take place on the landing page can be fed back. But it's not like anybody has to understand like Google Analytics, where you don't even know where to begin to there. This is really simple. You're putting in, it's, by the way, visual editor. You don't need to be a mathematician. You don't even need a coder or designer. You'll pick a test. You'll choose the test. You'll visually, without touching your server, without touching your landing pages, it's technology agnostic. I mean, I don't care where your page or site is built. You'll be able to point and click and change the images or change the video or change where a link goes to or change the headline visually. Okay. The experience is instant for your customers, meaning they aren't seeing multiple pages. They're seeing, if it's mypage.com, they're seeing the exact same mypage.com without a redirect or without a refresh. What you're looking at the end of this is very simple. You're going to see a clear winner. You don't have to there. When you look at that clear winner, you're going to be able to clearly see which variables and versions. We can even take it a step further. There's an algorithm built in. So VisiOpt does this all for you, called variable influence. And you'll be able to see on the winning page of all the paid things that you have been testing, which of those variables and versions had the most influence on this page winning. So you now have a starting point for your next test. What is actually creating influence on that page? But just to be clear to everyone, Google Analytics and other analytics programs can be really tough to figure out, okay, get all this data. Now, what do I do with it? VisiOpt's the opposite. VisiOpt is, here's your winner.
Love it. Is there any difference between like if someone has like a course or a product or service and some of their funnels are like freebies? They're not necessarily they can't necessarily put like a dollar conversion on someone coming and like getting a guide, free guide, for example, to capture lead information. And, they've got the sales team behind the scenes has to do work with that lead versus like selling widgets or things where it's like literally you go to the pipeline and you click buy, enter your credit card information. Does that make a difference with how you test or how you set up things?
Well, it's really, really interesting. So we're working with a very large client that's doing something similar. So just to reiterate, is if you're trying to get leads off of Facebook that are being sold by a sales team versus a blue widget. First of all, I think there's a couple of lessons that we can give people here. First of all, we can tie in very easily all the way back to your sales department. So let's just talk from a simple technical scenario. So we can see how a test is working throughout an entire funnel. Let's stick with your example. So if we have a page, you go in an ad to a landing page, you're running tests, let's assume on this landing page. The goal of the landing page is to get an opt-in or book a call, right? Here's what I like to say. Yes, you can do that, but you can't eat leads. You can't eat clicks. And it's a big mistake that a lot of people do. So you can tie in that back end sales. And now you can see not only what page got which version, let's make this up, version 4 got the most leads, but which version made the most sales, what version got the highest AOV. And that's where people go wrong. I will tell you, after all your years and seeing thousands and thousands of tests, almost always, never like to be offended, but almost always, the highest opt-in page does not result in the highest revenue. So in our scenario, maybe you have 3 versions that beat the control, right? Maybe one beat the control by 20% and one beat the control by 15%. But you may find that when you look all the way through the funnel, when you look, the one that beat it by 15% actually is producing a significantly higher AOV. So you want this data. I'm glad you brought this up at your disposal. The other mistake people make is, and we can see this in any funnel. So let's take your widget real quick. You have a pre-sell page that goes to a product page that goes to checkout, upsell 1, upsell 2. So what many people will do is, let's say they'll run it and they'll say, run it to checkout or to upsell 1, saying that, you know what, people drop off. Well, in VisiOpt, you can not only see, you can see throughout the entire funnel, including if they drop off, because we have with one click to connect to your server, your cart. So we can see the actual revenue and AOV in real time. And it's a huge mistake. It's why people run tests, run out to the marketplace and lose money, because you're seeing it to upsell 1. But what if that is producing a lot of conversions, but they're not taking your upsell flow in the e-commerce example? Because this whole thing, the same scenario applies. You could be making the wrong decision. So you need something like VisiOpt that not only enables you to test quickly, but allows you to see that result throughout that funnel. And I'll just add one other thing. You're also able to see which version, among a lot of other things, went to mobile and which went to desktop, which is something people don't pay attention to. Maybe version 3 is crushing it to desktop, but version 6 is the one that's really winning to mobile. So I just wanted to make clear, I love your scenario about the sales, but that same type of flow and the same problems that can create apply to all kinds of funnels, regardless of what they're selling.
I really appreciate you pointing out how, you really have to track things to the end, because, ultimately, like you said, you cannot eat leads. You need the dollars to feed your family. That's what we're all in the business for. And so if you're not tracking the pipeline, the flow from start to when the dollar hits your bank account, you're missing potentially critical data. People could think that, if you've got an ad, or just trying to reiterate, like, if you've got an ad or landing page, it could be really good at converting, getting information from people that are not necessarily the ideal client, versus you might have one that's got the lower conversion rate, but every single one of those is the big ticket client that you want. And so that having
Exactly.
that full end-to-end tracking tells you that you would not otherwise see if you just ended at landing page leads as your KPI.
Yep. I think that's why so many people, even bigger companies, make the mistake of thinking, testing, it works, but maybe not all that great. Everybody talks about it, but doesn't put as much time. Again, I know this sounds self-serving, but truthfully, the number one lever, whether they ever do anything with VisiOpt or not, the number one lever that you have in your business is testing and optimization properly, being able to see. It is without. If not, a new ad can make a difference, but it's not going to change a bad landing experience. It's the reason, if we want to take this even another level, people that hire agencies, why there's so much churn in agencies. They're looking for someone or something to be their savior for their business, when they don't realize, and I look at this good, it's actually in your control, which is a good thing. This isn't a complicated thing. It means that we can get rid of all of this nonsense and focus on improving, talking to our ideal customer, improving and talking to them throughout the journey, so that we're not only, just to be clear, talking about the landing page, but every one of the steps all the way through, and making continual improvements. And I love it because A, it's what makes the most difference, and B, it puts everybody back in control. You can't control the algorithm. You can't control changes in Facebook. You can't control new competition coming into a marketplace, but you can control how it is you're seen in the marketplace and how they respond to your offers.
This has been incredible. If you guys listening are as inspired and pumped up to start doing more analytics and measuring of your data as I am, get in touch with Scott. We're going to have a link to his website in the video description and the podcast notes. It's going to go straight to his page. Get in touch with him. And Scott, you have a special offer for the audience if they get in touch with you through your website from after hearing this episode.
Yep, there'll be a little, widget chat icon. Reach out, let us know about that they heard about us through this podcast, and be more than happy to do a personal one-on-one 30-minute conversion optimization audit to talk about your website and see where you can improve. I love talking. Our team loves talking about CRO and optimization. We live and breathe this stuff, not because we are data nerds, although it's weird for a data company there, but we love the marketing side, the creative side of it, and watching it come together. So yeah, I'd love to extend that offer for anybody in your audience.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. Really appreciate you having on this show. You've shared amazing information with our audience.
Thank you. Been a lot of fun.